In this video, we're going to talk about adding texture to your mug. So for this, you will need a mat and your clay. Your clay, up till now, you have rolled out a slab and it is on a can. You should have some extra clay and a wet paper towel in there. At this point, your clay might be a little bit dry depending on how long it's been sitting in the bag. So there's a couple things you should think about. If you want to add texture, you could do it while it's upright. If your clay seems slightly dry, you might add texture while it's upright so you don't end up cracking it. If it's pretty wet, I would suggest rolling it back out so that you can do the texture on the slab. So I rolled it out, I'm going to flip it over. There's usually a smooth side that you can work with. When you're adding texture, I would suggest experimenting first. So try not to touch that too much. Here's my extra clay. I am just going to roll that out so I have a flat surface right next to my clay. And I'm going to try adding some different textures. Think about ways that you can use different things. There are a number of objects that you could use. Here are just some random objects that I have decided to try. Here's a key, a shell, and here's my fettling knife. I could get an interesting texture by repeating my fettling knife. If I did that all around my mug, that might be really interesting. The glazes that we are going to use are affected by texture. So this might look really good the way the glaze interacts with the texture. Sometimes the glaze will make areas lighter and sometimes it will make areas darker. Maybe I try using this and I make some sort of longer shapes with this little tool. Maybe a bolt here or there could be interesting. See how they work before you actually push them into your mug. Here's a key. You can try things. Sometimes things don't work the way you think that they will. And realize that the glaze is going to go over this. Glaze is a thin layer of glass that's usually colored. So that will add another 1/8 of an inch, so it might not be as deep as you think it is. It might not show up because the glaze might cover it. So once I've figured out what I want to do, I'm just going to put this back in the bag. And a good idea when you're not working with clay is to bag it with the wet paper towel so it doesn't dry out. Drying out is probably the worst thing that can happen at this stage. Once I have my clay laid out, I'm ready to start in. I think I'm actually going to make a big long line with this ruler. I'm going to use the edge of it to make a line. If you do that, be very careful that you don't go too deep. If I end up pushing too deep with this whole ruler, I can split the clay in two. And when I roll it, it's going to make it even thinner. It's going to kind of pull at this and stretch the clay. So if I do something like this, I'm not going to go very deep. I'm just going to push gently into the clay, and I can kind of look on this side to make sure I'm not going too deeply into the clay. Then maybe I'll try using this tool to make my texture. I really like this texture, so I'm just going to kind of repeat it in even marks all the way along here. Having it laid out actually is much easier than trying to do it on the can, but sometimes you don't have that option of being able to roll it out if it's too dry. Maybe I do this long one next. And I'm not pushing very much. If I push too hard, I'm going to go too deep and then it will crack when I roll it around the clay. Because remember, when I roll it back around the can, I'm actually stretching the clay. So I'm trying to kind of get that as even as I can. You can have as much or as little as you'd like. I'm going to use the back or maybe my needle tool here to make some more dots. Trying to get them close to even. If you want to write something in there, I would not suggest that. I would say that that usually doesn't show up as well, but it is your mug. You decide what you want to do. I am looking for texture, so you need texture along with your writing if you decide to use writing or something like that. Once I have the texture that I want on my mug, My next step is to just roll it back up. So to do that, I have it on here. I'm going to gently, I could even peel it off the way I did it with the slab. Peel it off, try not to affect the texture. I'm going to take my can with my newspaper or paper wrapped around it, and I'm just going to roll it back up. So it's back around the can, and I'll leave it back in my bag with my extra clay so that it doesn't dry out, and I'll bag it. You might need to re-wet your paper towel or put another one in there if you feel like your clay is drying out too much.